Hello, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kimmy, and this is going to be my very first YouTube video on my channel. And for today's video, we are going to do a Procreate basics tutorial along with a little process video of how I use all those tools. So to get into it, I'm just gonna do a little introduction to all the tools that I use, how I use them, and then along with my process video, I'll talk about how I actually use those tools. Yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you know, we're gonna figure it out together. We're kind of gonna do this vlog style. Also, these are not real glasses, they're just blue light blockers because one day I went outside for a walk and my vision was very blurry and I was like, I should probably get some blue light blockers since I am looking at a screen for like 9 to 10 hours a day, every day. So I got some, and since then they've helped. If you work on your screen a lot, I would definitely recommend getting some. Yeah, let's get into it. Oh yeah, also, I don't have a table in my apartment. So we're gonna figure that out too. But once I figure out how I'm gonna set this up for the video, I'll show you guys how I'm doing it, and then I'll give you a little intro to the tools that I'm using with my iPad and the pen and everything, and then we'll get started. So let's get into it. All right, so this is how we're gonna do it. I don't have a proper table, so also don't mind my dirty dishes, but I have this like little box that I'm gonna paint set up, and then I put a rock on the bottom. I'm gonna put my phone here, and then record my iPad down here. Yeah, we'll see how it works. I don't have a proper recording setup yet. I also just moved from Minnesota to Arizona, and I couldn't really bring like anything with me. So yeah, we're just gonna wing it. All right, let's do it. All right, first things first, iPad, Apple Pencil. I would highly recommend getting an Apple Pencil. I have the second generation. You don't need the second generation. I just highly recommend having an Apple Pencil because number one, it has a magnet that connects to your iPad and that's how it charges. This is the second generation anyway. And it has pressure sensitivity. So when you're drawing, you can change the size of your line weight. So if it's really light, it'll be small and faint, but then if I press down, it gets fat and darker. And this is really nice because if you don't have one of these that has pressure sensitivity, it's just like drawing with a monoline and you lose a lot of depth in your drawings because of that. Also, it has palm cancellation technology, so I can draw with my hand on the screen and it won't pick up anything that my palm is doing. Sometimes it'll pick it up a little bit, but it's really not that big of a deal. So I highly recommend spending a little extra money and getting an Apple Pencil. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is just a very quick overview into what tools there are and where they are. And then when I get into the process of actually making the drawing I'm going to do for this video, then I'll talk about more specifics in that. But for now, I'm just gonna show you where all these tools are. So here is your pen tool, your drawing tool, where all of your fun brushes are. There's a ton of different brushes and they're all good for really different things. But for sketching, I'm gonna be using soft pastel and I will sketch in black, but this is how that works. Just draw, just the simple drawing. And then your blending tool is right here. And this is so you can blend. Then you have your eraser tool right here where you can erase. And then right next to that, this is your layers tool. And your layers tool is really important when you're working digitally. We won't get too into specifics for the beginner tutorial just because it's not really necessary. But the more you play around with it, the more you'll begin to understand what it is and how to use it. And then next to your layers is the color wheel. So if you go to your disk, this is where all your different colors are and how you change the selection. So to change the color, say I want red, you just slide the wheel around and then you can adjust the hues on the inside of the circle. And then you have your palette right here, and then if you click palettes down here, you can make your own palette. Okay, so that's that. Over on this, you have 2 sliding bars. The first one is to adjust the size of your brush. So if I do really small, it'll draw really small. If I do really big, it'll draw really big. And then down here is your opacity tool. So what opacity does is it basically changes the transparency of your brush. So what I mean by that is if I'm drawing and I want it to be really transparent, I'm gonna slide it down so you can't really see, it's super light, but then if I move it all the way up, it's gonna be really dark and I don't even have to press down. So for sketching, I like to have the opacity down a little bit because I'm very heavy-handed, so it just makes it easier to create layers and see what I'm doing. And then over here you have tools. This is where you can insert a photo, take a photo, add text, cut, copy, paste, insert a file, all that good stuff. And if you go over to Canvas, you have your crop and resize. So if you click crop and resize, this is where you can adjust the actual size of your canvas. Click done. There you go. You can also do it like specifically by dimension too. Drawing guide, this one is really nice. I use this sometimes when I'm sketching or if I'm lettering just because it gives me a nice grid. So down here, if you click that, you'll have a grid. And you can also change it to perspective, symmetry, whatever you might need. And then it also gives you the option to change the opacity of the grid line. So if you want it to be really obvious or faint, you can adjust the slider there, the thickness, and even the grid size. So that's all really nice. I definitely use that a lot. Then we have reference. I don't really use that much. If I am going to use a reference, I just go into add and then insert photo. That's all we really need to worry about for right now. I'll get in more to the rest of this at the end of the video. And then here, if you click here, here's your adjustments tab. This is where you can do a lot of fun stuff to your finished pieces or adding any just cool effects. Basically, just think of this as your effects tab. The ones I only really use on here are liquify and chromatic aberration, and I'll get into those later, but just know these are your fun effects, and I would highly recommend playing around with these just because they're fun, and the best way to learn is just by trial and error, playing around with it yourself and seeing what works. This is your select tool. I will also get into this throughout the process video. And then here is another select tool. This allows you to change the shape of your layer or drawing or whatever you're working on. It does it by layer, so I only have one layer right here, so it's only going to change that layer. So I click this. If I want to click uniform, it changes, keeps the same dimensions, but moves it all together. Freeform, I can adjust it, make it thin, make it long, fat, skinny, whatever you want to do. Distort changes the perspective of it. So you can go like that. This one is really fun. I definitely use this a lot while I'm sketching, more for like landscape stuff, but that's that. And then warp allows you to just bend it around, make it all messy, make my smiley face really big. Nice. But yeah, that's all you really need to know for the beginner basics. These are where all the tools you're going to be using are. So now let me show you how I use all of them in my own process. Oh yeah, and if you want to go back, click back and everything will change. Or if you want to go back to forward, there you go. And you can take away as much as you want. All right, let's get into my process. All right, let's start our artwork. So how do we start our artwork? We click the plus in the upper right-hand corner, click the plus, click this box with another little plus in it, and then we are going to make our canvas. So I like to use 11 by 14 size canvas, and I'm gonna click from pixels to inches here. I'm gonna click 11, then I'm gonna click down here and click 14. And the reason I like to use 11 by 14 is because it's a very standard size. So if I wanna make any of my drawings into prints in the future, it'll be easy because a lot of print shops are able to do 11 by 14, and you're able to find a lot of frames that are the size 11 inches by 14 inches. And then we're gonna wanna make sure that our DPI is set to 300, and we're gonna wanna make sure that our DPI is set to 300 because that is the highest quality you can get when you make a print. So if it's anything lower than that and you try to make a print of your drawing, it's gonna come out kind of fuzzy and just not very clear. So make sure that is set to 300 DPI, and then it'll give me my maximum layers here. This just depends on how large your image is and how the DPI of your image. So like I said, I'm gonna do 11 by 14. I'm gonna make sure my DPI is set to 300, and then I'm gonna click create. Now we can begin the sketching phase. So I personally just like to sketch in Procreate. However, I know that is difficult for a lot of people. So you can just sketch on paper like you normally would, take a picture of it, and then go to this tool, click add, click insert a photo, and then you can upload the photo of your drawing. And then you would go over to your layers tab, select the layer that your drawing is in, click this N right here, and then click this and slide it down so the opacity is lowered. It's a little bit more transparent. And then you could make another layer on top, and you could trace that in Procreate now, and then you would have a digital version of it. But like I said, I just like to sketch in Procreate, so I'm just gonna be sketching on this first layer here. So let's make a drawing and then go from there. So all the tools I'm going to be using in this phase, mostly just my brush, which is my soft pastel brush in the sketching category. That is what I'm going to be using to make my drawing. And then I'm also going to be using my eraser, this selection tool, and my layers tab. So I'll get into that throughout the process, but let's start by making the actual sketch. So I'm going to make sure my drawing is set to sketching, soft pastel, and then I'm gonna draw a little creation. All right. Okay, so here's a great example of where I would use the selection tool when I'm sketching. So I'm gonna click this S right here, and I'm gonna make sure it's set to freehand. I'm gonna go select this ear, make sure the circle is closed, click copy paste, click this button, flip horizontal, and then I have an exact duplicate of this ear. I can adjust it a little bit with this green slider that helps me rotate. So I'm gonna rotate a little bit, and then I'm gonna stick it right on the face of the other side. But one thing you have to make sure when you're doing this is you have to realize that when I clicked copy paste, that made another layer. So to combine those layers back into the same one, I'm just gonna pinch it like that. Oops, pinch it. And then now it is on the same layer again. So I'm gonna keep working. Okay, so as I'm working on this drawing, I decided I wanted to add another element to it. But in order to do that, I need to move my whole drawing over and then change the opacity and make another layer. So this is how you do it. I'm going to click this tool, make sure it's set to uniform because I don't want to change the size and shape. I just want to make it a little bit smaller altogether. So I'm going to click the corner, drag it down a little bit, adjust it to the size that I like, move it over, because I want to add his hand holding like one of those honey stick things, you know what I'm saying? I'll draw it and then you'll be able to tell what I'm talking about. But I'm going to select it, click uniform, move it over. I'm going to click this layers tab, click another layer, go back to my first layer, click this N right here, change the opacity down a little bit, and this is just going to make it easier for me to tell what I'm working on this layer. So now I'm going to select this layer and my pen tool again, and I'm gonna keep sketching. Okay, so now that I've finished the sketch and I'm happy with it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all my different sketch layers that I've made and I'm gonna pinch to combine them all. And then I'm going to click this N again, change the opacity down a little bit since I'm gonna be tracing over it. And I wanna be able to tell where I'm tracing over the drawing. So I'm gonna turn the opacity down, click number 1 again, and then I'm gonna click the plus to add another layer. And this is now going to be my outline layer. So now for the outlining, I'm gonna click a different brush. So I'm gonna click my brush, I'm gonna go to calligraphy, and then I'm gonna click script because that is my personal favorite brush for outlining. So now that we've finished outlining, what we're gonna do is go to our sketch layer and turn it off. So but to turn it on and off, you click the little checkbox right here. So now my sketch layer is off. I'm gonna go back to my outline layer and I am gonna duplicate it twice. And then I'm gonna turn off the first one. The first one is just to keep, just in case you mess something up and you need another layer to go back to. The one in the middle is going to be your color fill layer for when we add colors. And it is really important that on this layer, all of the lines are connected and closed, because if you go to fill the color and it's not closed, it'll fill up the entire canvas, which is an issue, but it's fine. And then the top layer is just to have another line layer on top so that when you're coloring and you're adding shading and highlights and all this stuff and you're going over the lines, you still have another layer on top that will keep it all nice and clean and together. And I will show you an example of that when we get into the coloring phase, which we're about to do right now. So let's do it. This is my favorite part of the entire process because I like to just layer colors on top of each other. I like to be creative with my color combinations, and I just like to push myself. It's a challenge to work with a lot of colors. I think it's even more of a challenge to work with a very limited color palette. But for this, we're gonna keep it pretty simple, be themed. So I'm gonna click this layer in the middle, and the tools I'm gonna be mostly using for this are my selection tool, my brush tool, obviously my eraser too, because we all make mistakes, and then the layers and my color fill. So this is the tool for this process, your color wheel and your palette. Also, another handy thing to know is if you just hold your finger down on a color that you want, it'll select that color for you. So that's basically your eyedropper tool. So whatever color I press down and select, it's gonna change the color here, and then that's the new color that I'm working with for color fill. And then also, when I was talking about earlier, if your lines aren't closed, this is a perfect example. See how it's only missing a little bit? If I go in here and I click a color to color fill it with, and I go over, it's gonna fill the entire canvas with stuff that's not connected. So that's why you wanna make sure that all of your lines are closed. Okay, so now we've got all of our base layers filled in. So now it's time to do shading and highlights. And how I like to do this is I like to go to my layers. I like to add another layer in between my color fill and my layer on top. And this is just basically where I do all the shapes. So how I shade is I don't actually like use this shading tool really at all. I just like to like block the color on top. And what I mean by that is I literally use this selection tool and then I draw shapes on top. So how I'm gonna do this is I make sure this layer is selected. I'm gonna go here, for example, select this color, and I'm gonna do a highlight. So I'm gonna turn the shade up a little bit. I'm gonna go to my selection tool, make sure it's set on freehand, and then I'm literally just gonna draw in the area where I want the highlight to be. And I'm gonna click this little circle once it's filled, and boom, I have my highlight. And this is really nice because I draw a lot of flowers, so it saves me a lot of time when I'm going in and highlighting. So for example, if I'm doing all the petals, literally just go in and draw them all like this. And then once I click the layer tool, after all of these are selected, it's gonna have all my highlights on the flower, just like that. So now I'm gonna do this for all the shading and highlights, and I'll be right back. So now that we have finished the shading and outlining, there is one more thing I sometimes like to do, and that is changing the whole color of the outline. So I usually will just outline it in black just because it's easier, and then I can adjust it more from there. But what I like to do is I like to go in and I like to add another layer on top of my final outline layer, and I turn that into a clipping mask. So I click clipping mask, and what that basically does is it means whatever you're gonna add to this layer is only going to show up on what is under this layer. So that's just my outline. So when I fill in this layer, it is only going to change my outline. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here, make sure my script is selected, I'm gonna turn the size all the way up, and I'm going to pick a color that's not all the way black, because sometimes when you're working with just a straight black outline, it gives your image a very digital and cartoon feel, which there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I like to give it a little bit more of a traditional feel, even though it's really gummy. It just makes it look a little bit softer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick like a really dark brown, and then I'm just gonna go in and color over all of that. And this is actually looking really nice, so I'm probably gonna end up keeping this instead of all black. I'll turn it on and off, and you can see if you can see a difference. To me, it's a really big difference, but I guess to some people it probably is like, why does that even matter? It's not that big of a deal. But you know what? To me, it is, okay? It is. It makes a big difference. All right, so that should be covered. Here, I'll turn it on and off so you can see. Okay, that's the black, and this is dark brown. See, I think it's just softer. I think it just looks nicer. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Okay, but yeah, now that we finished this, it's time to export it, and this could be airdropping it to your phone, emailing it to somebody, whatever you want to do. Here's how you do it. Click the tool, click share, and then sharing gives you the option to send this as a Procreate file, Photoshop file, PDF, JPEG, PNG, or a TIFF. And if you don't know what all those are, don't worry about it. It's okay. And you can also have the option to share these in layers, but that's, as a beginner, you don't really need to worry about that. It's okay. If you want to share your drawing to your phone, all you need to do is click share and JPEG, and then you can email it, airdrop it, put it on Instagram, whatever you want to do. I usually just airdrop a JPEG to my phone, and I'll do a couple so I can do detail shots or whatever. But if you are wanting to use this for like a clothing design or a logo, or I don't know, whatever you want to use it for, you can go in here. And then all you need to do is go down to the background layer and click off. Like just turn the whole layer off. And then you can go in here and click share JPEG. And I'm just gonna save this to my camera roll to show you what it does. It basically just gets rid of the background, so it's just a transparent image. So then when I go in here, there's no background. It's just that. And you can use that for a lot of stuff. But for mostly my beginners, all you really need to know is just share JPEG. And you can airdrop it or whatever you want to your phone. And then another really cool feature about Procreate is it gives you a time lapse of your whole drawing process at the end of it. So you can click time lapse replay, and it'll show you the whole history of your canvas and the process that you did. And this is really fun for like content creation or whatever you want to use it for. But yeah, it'll go and show the entire process that you did. And you can even export that video as the full length or a 30-second version. So if you want that, that's a pretty cool feature too. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for coming and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed and were able to get something out of it. If you liked it, please like the video, maybe leave a comment if you want, and subscribe to my channel. I plan on uploading a lot more videos like this and just fun videos of me, doing art, doing what I do every single day. And if you want to follow along, please hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time out of your day. I hope you have an amazing day. Goodbye. Do you have anything to say to the viewers, Rocky? All right.